Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with the Coaches. I am Holly, and I'm the RN Health Coach here at Lenovo in North Carolina. And joining me today is my co-host. What's her name again? I'm just kidding. Kim. I have two Gradys, so I was like Grady, Liz Grady, or Kim Grady. Kim Grady. Raise your hand, Dis Grady. Okay, this is Kim Grady. She's the other RN Health Coach based in Chicago and serves the Chicago and Santa Clara locations. Just before I introduce our most fabulous guest speaker today, who you see on the screen, Dr. Liz Grady, I just want to give you guys a quick overview of what Coffee with the Coaches is and how this is all going to kind of go down today. So grab your favorite coffee, sit back, relax. This is not going to be a super formal, yay, look, I'll get letters. The idea is that Kim and I are going to have biweekly conversations about health and wellness, in a really kind of laid back fashion. We want it to be super interactive. We want to cover a lot of different topics that you want to hear, topics about different articles that we might have read or stuff that we've heard from our great friend Liz here. Have different guest speakers on and really get some feedback from you guys about, what is happening in your lives? What can we help you with? What can we discuss that will help you better your health and wellness? And so this is only our second conversation, so thank you again for joining us. And what we've decided to do right now is self-care. We're going to talk about self-care and we're going to do a series on it. So this is the first in the series. So I really encourage you to join us for the next probably two or three, where today we're going to just talk about what is self-care. Why is that a buzzword now? Why do we need to be taking care of ourselves? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to me? And, how does that fit into this pandemic and how we're all coping with that? And what can we do about it? What are some strategies that we can use to help get through this really difficult time for many of us? So that being said, please don't hesitate to throw a question in there. We've got some polls that we're going to throw out to you guys. And let's make this as fun and interactive and informative as we can make it. So before we begin, I just want to share with you an analogy. I've been reading, several articles about self-care and, Kim and Liz, please feel free to just jump in here whenever. But I found this, and Kim and I discussed this a little bit, this really cool analogy about being on an airplane. And, when there's turbulence or if the pressure in the cabin, there's not enough oxygen and the oxygen masks fall and the flight attendant tells you, what's the first thing they tell you? Put the oxygen mask on, right? Put your oxygen mask on first so that you're able to help other people, right? So I think we're in this weird place with this pandemic where, the oxygen levels might seem to be a little bit low and we're not all putting on that oxygen mask. And so I think this is where self-care really comes into play. So I just thought that was a really cool analogy that I would share with you guys.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Liz, in your professional opinion, like what is self-care? What is like really kind of the true definition of self-care?
Well, it's, I think so many people throw it around, we use it in a lot of different ways. And it is it's unique to everybody. You really have to find your own kind of unique plan. It's like any coping skill. You have to kind of find one that works for you, that makes you feel like you are taking care of yourself. So I think that there's some things that work for everybody in terms of our health and our general health and wellness. And then there's really finding an individualized something that helps you feel rejuvenated. And I think that's the key. Because you might say, as a health coach or as a counselor, you might say, well, have you tried, such and such a class? And somebody says, yeah, I tried that, but it didn't really do anything for me. It was really hard for me to get there, or I had a lot of barriers or whatever. So really finding what works, I think, is a big part of unlocking what is self-care for you as an individual and what might work. But I think part of the key is really understanding that it has to be something that kind of fills you back up. So there's a lot of things that we end up just doing because we know they're good for us. Like many people go to the dentist, many people go and get your, your health checked and things like that with doctor's appointments. And that is part of self-care. But in addition to that, especially when it comes to like managing stress, or for helping us to have uplifted moods and really feel like we can keep going, keeping ourselves going, and manage stress. I think it's really about finding something that's rejuvenating.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I find that I need, like, I'll get to a point where I need that. It's like an escape almost. Do you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
need to get away, especially right now when we're all just, the getaways are just not as easy as they once were.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
And I think,
absolutely.
yeah, and recognizing that in yourself, right, is, I think, important and a really good first step. But how do you get there? Do you know what I mean? Like, with this, we're really in this pervasive, um, this a culture where, doing it all and being everything to everybody all the time is truly pervasive, right? And especially now that we're all at home. And, for some of us, it's more than others, I think, or, the balance at home, if you have two people at home, and not all of us have two people at home. So, you know, you want to be really good at your job, and you really want to be a present parent, which is not optional right now, right? So for most of us, and then you want your kids to be successful at school, which is going to be starting for all of us. So, where does that balance come in of trying to do everything and still taking care of ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah.
Liz,
Well,
Liz, before you answer that, I just wanted to touch back on what you said about like filling your cup. Like one of my, like I've read it a ton and I'm sure everybody else has too. Like, what is your cup filled with? Like, are you filled with gratitude? Are you filled with feelings of feeling good? Like, what happens when you get rattled? What happens when something doesn't go your way? And I know you talk a lot about resilience and like improving those skills for people. And it's funny how all these things are kind of interconnected. And that also goes to like, you can't pour from an empty cup. If there's nothing in your cup, you have nothing to give. So that's kind of how we talk about, self-care isn't selfish. If you don't fill yourself up first, you can't effectively give to everyone else. So I think it's, just good to focus on like, you need to make sure you take care of yourself first, because then you can't pass it on to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's so right. That's exactly, that was going to be my answer actually, because I was going to say, let's go back to the analogy about the oxygen. You can't, this is the do everything, be everything culture, and everybody's, so busy and you're doing everything and you can't really feel like you can say no to, clubs in the community, plus work, plus kids, plus caretaking, plus whatever. You can't really keep going until you figure out ways to keep rejuvenating yourself. And that's that oxygen or filling your cup. So part of it, I think one of the first steps is really just to have an awareness of what are those things that might fill your cup. So for some people, that could be, getting regular exercise, which I think is really important. There's, of course, 5 or 6 things that we all should be doing just to keep ourselves like healthy and well. But in addition to those, it might be that, it's time with friends, which is one of the things that's limited right now. It could be that it's like self-care or something that you do like get nails done or get your hair cut or do something where you feel like it just kind of peps you up till you feel like you have
Right.
some more energy and something to face the world. It might be getting away, it might be going into solitude. Some people find that they get really refilled when they get out in nature and just have some time, with those kind of things. Yeah. So like a walk, a hike, whatever. Some people feel
Yeah.
that way with travel, but it's that identification, I think, of what works is that first step towards self-care. Because you can do all the things. You can just say, oh, I'm going to do 10 things this week for self-care, and you can do all of them. And if you feel like you didn't really help yourself, you might have stressed yourself out more trying to get more appointments in or whatever. So you really do have to kind of take that intentional look at it to say, what is the thing that really rejuvenates my energy, maybe lifts my mood, and really helps me pay it forward? Because that's, I think, another part of self-care is you're really paying it forward to yourself so you can keep going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something
I
that I
hear.
found that helped me and my husband, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, even though he'll never see this. We read the 5 languages for him and for her, and there's like a quiz in there, and you can go through like, and it changes, right? Like those things change all the time. Like self-care changes for you based on where you're at and what's going on, and it might not be the same thing every day, but you can like, there's a really easy quiz you can take to be like, oh, like I really like physical touch, or I really like gifts, or I really like you know, acts of service. Like if you can kind of like narrow down something, and then it like also helps you recognize, then it also tells other people like, hey, like this is how I prefer to receive love. Like this is what is meaningful to me. And it
Yeah.
helps you kind of like speak their language, you know, I get, for like the lack of better terms, because like you could do something for somebody 100, you know, like self-care shouldn't feel like it's forced. Like you said, like going to the stuff you have to do that might not necessarily fill your cup. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like deliberate, conscious, like I'm taking care of myself type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like, so I heard Liz say, finding out what that is for you and, figuring out how to make that happen. And I think, in my experience with my clients at Lenovo, interestingly, and this surprised me, is that, I have asked the question, what brings you joy? Right? And I think self-care is a little bit different, whereas it doesn't have to bring you joy, like, it's okay. Like I love joyful things, but that's not self-care to me. But, I have heard several people say, I don't know, which is heartbreaking to me because I think it's so, so important, right? It's so, so important. And Kim, what you said is right on point too, because I think it is different for everybody, right?
Mhm.
We don't all have to go to the spa to find, as a self-care method. Do you know what I mean? Like we, some people like to go to the gym. Some people just like Liz said, go be by yourself. But it is different for everybody, and it has to be okay. So especially in the same house, like my self-care and my husband's, again, we're throwing our husbands sort of under that bus today. They're different, and that's okay, right? Sometimes I don't understand why, he does the things he does for self-care, but he doesn't, and he really doesn't understand why I like to be alone. I do, and I love it. But you have to appreciate, you have to just recognize that, your self-care and my self-care are different, and that's okay, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I like your thinking about connecting it with an emotion, because if you think about it, what are those activities that bring a positive emotion? Maybe not joy, but maybe just feels good, feels pleasant.
Right.
Like a walk or doing some gardening or something like that. Is there something you can think of that maybe wasn't necessarily joyous, but it brought some positive feeling? Because just having those positive feelings that disperse throughout the day or the week, can really help to regulate the mood, so you're not always feeling that stress or those negative feelings.
Yeah,
So
100%. One of the things that I read in this Harvard Health article was really interesting too, and Liz, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, was mourning, and I'm going to bring it up here, is mourning the loss. So thinking about where we are in this crazy pandemic, mourning the loss of the things that we've had, right? So mourning the loss of that constant social contact that we have when we're at work, mourning the loss of being able to see certain loved ones maybe because they have chronic conditions. So checking in with yourself to know that, if you're feeling stressed, you know, it's okay, and you have to recognize that that's a loss. We legitimately have lost a lot of the things that we love doing. Going to restaurants for some people, that was a big part of, just getting out and not cooking, and,
Mhm.
and that's a loss. So I found that really, really interesting, because you don't think about, we're in a pandemic. You don't think about, you don't think about that as being a loss, but I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the loss of having something to look forward to has been weighing heavy on a lot of people's minds. People have shared that with me a lot. Just having, sometimes I feel like you can push yourself, you can keep pushing yourself if you know you have a vacation coming up, or you have some time off coming up,
Mhm.
or you're going to do that really fun, girls trip or whatever the case may be. You think, okay, well, I can work extra hard because I know that I've got this reward. And for a lot of people, those rewards, in the way that they were hoping, or those trips that they had planned, were canceled or rescheduled or delayed. So I think you're right. The losses have been tremendous. People have had to reschedule weddings People didn't get to attend graduations, they didn't get to, if you had a loved one that passed away, you might not have gotten to attend like a ceremony or something that brought a celebration of that person's life or some closure. So there really has been a lot of tremendous losses when you think about it. And when you think about loss, it's hard to deal with, especially if you've got all the same work demands, all the same family demands, and everything laid on top of it. It is a real challenge. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So how do we set aside time to think about that? Do you know what I mean? Like, because we're all busy, because we've got so much going on,
Yeah.
how, people really struggle with even finding the time to give themselves an opportunity. So there's the self-care piece right there too, right? Is just finding 5 or 10 minutes to maybe write down
Yeah.
why, what am I sad about? What do I need to do? What makes me feel good? So thinking about, maybe the things that we've lost and acknowledging the things that you're sad about with this whole situation. But how do they get there? How do you, is it setting a goal of sitting down, working with a health coach perhaps? Um, right? Sitting down and trying to figure out, what is it? Because I know a lot of people are like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
There's not enough time in the day for me to do that, especially now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the concepts I like to share with people is kind of balancing acceptance and change. So, for example, what is it about the current pandemic or the situation that you can accept? Like maybe we have to do a little more accepting that that trip is delayed, or we won't get that vacation this year, or maybe the work demands have increased because the economy has changed in some way. So is there something about that that you can accept in a way that we don't have to like it, but just say, okay, it is happening and it is what it is. Now, balancing that with what I can do, almost like if you put them on a weighted scale,
Hmm.
what can I then do to help myself, like change or help myself just cope and manage through the situation? Sometimes when you're in the midst of a situation you have no control over, the number one thing to do is just manage yourself through that situation. So
Right.
I think if you think about sort of acceptance and change and what can I accept about it? What is it that I can do to help myself? So maybe face-to-face visits out to restaurants with my friends is not possible. But maybe if everybody orders takeout and we get to jump on a Zoom meeting, or we talk on the phone, or we figure out something else, we take to go and eat outside. Just trying to find little ways to change, little pieces of getting those same feelings. So we can find something that's a little bit rejuvenating. Maybe not what we originally intended, but something that maybe fills us up in such a way. But yeah, you really do. I think it's like exercise, it's like nutrition, it's like sleep. You have to make a choice to do it. I just kind of equate it to like going to the dentist. I don't really want to go to the dentist. I don't think I've ever woken up and said, hey, I'd like to go to the dentist.
No,
I
thank
don't want to, but somehow in my mind, I know that I need to go to keep, decent hygiene, good oral
you. Right.
hygiene. So in some way, I've made a mental decision that that's just what you do. So you
Yeah.
have to kind of make that mental decision, I think, with self-care too. And you have to say to yourself, I'm going to keep it on my to-do list. I might not get, it might not be this ideal where I get to do it, all these times throughout the week in all these wonderful ways. It might be just dispersed here and there, 5 and 10 minutes here and there of,
Yeah.
a little bit of mindfulness, or taking a great walk, or, just putting on some soothing music while you're working throughout the day can refill your cup just a little bit.
Yeah.
But
That's
think of it in
awesome.
terms of like those positive emotions, really give self-care a much broader, I think, definition, to really think of it in terms of whatever it is that brings you some joy or positive emotions.
Yeah. And you're right. It doesn't have to be a thing or going somewhere or having, or, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be grandiose, right? It
Yeah,
can just be as simple as a walk alone or with
yeah,
a friend, right?
yeah.
So different for so many people, but no, I think those are really, really great tips. Um,
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm gonna ask the audience one of the polls we have, see what we have. Do you regularly engage in some kind of self-care activity? Yes, no. If you want to share with us in the comments or the questions, we'll keep you anonymous unless you want us to tell everybody your favorite activity. Um, or maybe why you don't, if there's anybody that doesn't. We'll give you guys a couple more seconds.
Yeah, it will be interesting because and even though our numbers aren't huge today, just to get an idea of, if they're finding the time for that right now, right?
Yes, everyone does.
Wow,
This
that's
is ridiculous.
fantastic. That's really
That's
fantastic.
amazing.
It is amazing. I'm so actually thrilled to hear that because I didn't think that that was going to be the case. All right, we're done. I'm just kidding.
Clearly,
Job
our
here is
work here is done.
Whoa, that's it.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know. Um, and just to kind of piggyback on a couple of the things that Liz was saying earlier about, there's kind of a list of things that we should I say should lightly, but that really part of taking care of ourselves and self-care, like exercise and nutrition and good sleep. Lord have mercy, good sleep is so good for you. But those things that in our future Coffee with the Coaches, we are going to be addressing those. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We're going to concentrate a little bit more going forward on specifically nutrition and sleep, I think is the next one. And then we're going to have a guest speaker on as well to do the exercise and movement piece, because we know that body and mind, they work together,
Yeah.
right? So with all of this. So Liz, I want to talk to you a little bit about, or you share with us some strategies for people, I love what's it called? CBT, the stop sign, the stop
Yeah. Yep.
acronym.
Hmm.
When we're feeling burnt out and when we're feeling the overwhelming stress of this pandemic and work and everything that goes along with it, can you share with us some of those strategies that we can use um, going
Yeah.
forward?
Yes, definitely. There's a couple of, they're good little acronyms. I like those kind of things because they're easy to remember, like when you're in the moment. And if sometimes, you talk to a friend or a health coach or a counselor about it, and sometimes it's easier if you can recall some of the strategies you worked in. So I love these kind of little acronyms, but one is please, just the word please. And so the PL stands for treat any physical illness. And so that's really important to make sure you're taking care of yourself in a way that you're taking care of any physical illness. So if you don't have to worry about physical illness, that's great. But if you had something to manage, if you needed to see a doctor, if you thought about, vitamin supplements or other things to make sure that you were taking care of your physical body as best you can, I think that's really important. So PL is physical illness. Then there's the E, and that's, of course, for eating a balanced, nutritious foods. And that, again, is going to be unique for a lot of people based on your likes and dislikes. But that is so important. There are numerous studies, lots and lots of research, and more every single year about how the foods we eat actually affects how we're feeling, regulates brain chemicals, regulates our brain's ability to process hormones and stress hormones like cortisol or adrenaline. So if we're not getting proper nutrition, then we're starting at a disadvantage. So the E is eating nutritious, diet. A is avoiding mood altering substances. So that is alcohol, other things that might affect your mood. And I don't think people realize, one thing I really do try to educate people on, if you drink alcohol, is to really think about how it might affect your mood. And for a lot of people, they think, well, it helps me relax. And I could say, of course, it probably helps you relax in the moment when you drink alcohol. But what does it feel like the next day? What does it feel like a few hours after you drink that wine, that kind of thing? And I think that alcohol is a lot of part of people's like self-care, like they unwind with it or something like that. And so you really have to think about, is that the best choice though, if I'm having consequences the next day or if I'm putting myself at risk for health consequences? So the A stands for avoid mood altering substances. And then the S is for maintain good sleep. And people sometimes will laugh when I say that, and they say, huh, yeah, right, Liz, like no sleep. I get 4 or 5 hours if I'm lucky. And I say, okay, if you function on 4 or 5 hours and you're feeling good and we don't need to talk about self-care, fine. I know everybody's body is a little bit different, but for most people, it's 7 to 9 hours of restful, uninterrupted sleep where you're actually kind of going into that deep sleep. And then the E is exercise. And I always tell people it's any movement. You know, if you in your mind have this vision of this a kickboxing class, and you have some barriers to getting there, or it's not available right now, rethink movement. Think about it in terms of steps or minutes per week. They recommend that the minimum, right, is 180 minutes a week. So think about it in terms of a week. Don't worry about it day to day. You might have a lot of meetings one day. The next day you might be able to pick up 20 minutes of movement. But I just try to help broaden some of those things for people, because I think sometimes we get stuck in thinking about what it should be versus what we could get to right now, when you're feeling overloaded.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
yeah. So please is my go-to for everybody. Everybody should do please. And then in addition to please is called ABC. And that's one that's A is accumulate positive activities or emotions or moments. B would be to build mastery. So some people, for example, play an instrument. They might do some kind of gardening, cooking. There's some examples there that you're sharing. But something that's more than just what you can do when you can drift away and do something mundane. Like, so for me, I fill the dishwasher every night, but then there's always pans that I do by hand. Now, I'm not really building mastery of that activity because I do it so often, and it's so easy for me to just sit there and worry. I'm washing dishes and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how much do I have to do tomorrow, the next day, this weekend I've got to do this and that. So that's not really building mastery, but what mastery is really supposed to be, I think, is grabbing our attention and our focus. So it's more like when I'm trying to plant something, I'm thinking about the depth that I want to dig and what soil I need and how I need to water that and where do I want to put it. And there's much more thought into an activity like that. So I think if you think about building mastery, it really has to be something, I think, that captures your focus and maybe you can get better at over time. And then C is to cope ahead. And to me, self-care is something you're paying yourself like an investment every single day. You're setting yourself up for a better next day. I like thinking about it like that, because a lot of us who worries are really focused in the future. So if you're a worrier, one thing you can do instead of worrying, which never really changes the outcome, is to take action, right? And when you take action, you're actually paying it forward. So if I get good sleep tonight and I have some good foods today, I take care of myself, I go on a good walk, I'll probably rest better. And tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll be able to face like a tough day, and just try to feel at my best. So I think that ABC and please are two really good ones for just general regular health and wellness, especially if you can't get in those extravagant, really great things that some people can grab and put in the schedule. Yep.
Yeah, like like an Umstead spa visit, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
A free spa visit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And just so everybody knows, this link is in the handout. I updated the handout, and that's in the handout section. So you can download that. The link to this website is in there. It has all the skills on there. If you have any questions, you can always email Holly or I. Our emails are attached to that as well. So you can reach out if you have any issues downloading or anything about that. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. So guys, we're just going to wrap things up here. We just have a couple more minutes. So, something that you said, Liz, I just wanted to circle back to that was so important, I think, is to remember that, is grace. And she didn't use the word grace, but allowing yourself some space to know that, maybe that self-care thing doesn't happen every day. And, while we should, do the please, but those things that really nourish our minds and our bodies, they don't necessarily happen every day. But I do think, we have to recognize that, maybe that just, if that becomes one more thing for you, which I hear a lot from people, it's like, you know what, that's just one more thing I have to do, right?
Yeah.
Allow yourself some grace to do it when your stress bucket or your burnout bucket isn't so full. And remember that when you do it, it's something that you're never going to regret. I always tell my patients that's one of my big things. You're never going to regret a good night's sleep. You're never going to regret eating healthy. You're never going to regret going outside for a walk, and you will reap the benefits of it afterwards. But if you don't do one thing one day, it's okay. Right? It's okay. You'll find the space and time to fit it in. And I think, that's where Kim and I really do come in when it comes to health coaching and working with clients. And, we really want to help you build good habits, and, but we don't want to tell you what you need to do. I think, you'll set goals for self-care that will be your own. And our job, at Marathon and with health coaching and everything is to just to help you get there and help you figure out with what is going on in your life right now, what is the best avenue or the best street to take to get to that goal. And so if any of you have any questions for Kim and I or Dr. Liz, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I want to thank everybody for being here. Liz, thank you so much for being
Yes,
here.
thank you for having me. Thank
Yes,
you.
we do love you, and you are amazing. Always full of insight and great information. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Kim. You're the best. And everybody, thank you for joining us. And again, please fill out the post Coffee with the Coaches survey. Let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to address in the future, and stay tuned for more on self-care in the coming month. Bye, everybody. Have a great
Bye.
rest of your
Have a good
day.
day.
See ya.
Happy self-care.
Yeah, happy self-care.